Hello gamers, this is Sai and welcome back to Which Way Games. Now what would you do for fame and glory? And with that being said, let's get on with the video. When it comes to the world of gaming, games have been introduced to some new innovations of gameplay over the years. Starting from humble beginnings with simplistic gameplay via a single joystick and a button, going all the way to immersive worlds thanks to VR technology. But with all games, the main thing to get right is the gameplay. In fact, gameplay is hugely important when it comes to gaming. You could have the best looking game in the world, but if the gameplay's lacking, then gamers won't want to touch that with a 10-foot barge pole. Nowadays, modern games are pushing the boundaries when it comes to gaming, going that much further to entice gamers with even more realistic graphics and of course, better gameplay. However, like all things, you have to take a long hard look at the past to see what can be done to improve the future. And with that in mind, let's go back to the decade of the 90s. Gaming in the 90s was making that slow transition from the world of 2D gaming and into the realm of 3D. But this journey wasn't all gumdrops and rainbows. Along the way, many obstacles will appear, but luckily the gaming world had some legendary developers that wiped away these barriers without a thought. Of course, two I can think of in particular are Shigeru Miyamoto and Yu Suzuki. And speaking of Yu Suzuki, he made some fantastic games for Sega. Now with games such as Afterburner, Space Harrier and Outrun under his belt, Yu Suzuki had toyed around with the concept of 3D gaming with these particular games. Despite the limitations of the Sega Mega Drive, he'd managed to create the illusion of 3D gaming with a sprite scaling technique that proved hugely popular. Eventually, Sega announced that the Sega Saturn would open up a whole new playground for game developers and gamers, allowing them to create some legendary games. Now, one game I can think of that made this transition perfectly was Virtua Fighter, and a certain green alien will agree with me here, Virtua Fighter is fantastic.
You're goddamn right.
Virtua Fighter hit arcades and was an instant success, rubbing shoulders with the likes of Street Fighter 2 and Mortal Kombat. Gamers were blown away by the graphics, the gameplay was top notch, and of course, with most games, a home port soon happened. The Sega Saturn was soon blessed with a near perfect version of the arcade counterpart, but of course, gamers wanted more, and this came in the form of Virtua Fighter 2. But before I carry on, let's go back to the past to see how this adventure continued. Development for Virtua Fighter 2 began shortly after the release of Daytona USA, with the Sega AM2 division also working on the fantastic Virtua Cop. The aim was to have an even more detailed game than the first Virtua Fighter, with even more polygons, as well as being able to run more smoothly than its predecessor. Gamers were shown a demo of Virtua Fighter 2 at a Tokyo Games convention, which set the stage for this legendary fighting game. However, game developers soon ran into a few problems while trying to maintain a smooth frame rate for gameplay, as well as having limited space when it came to the character's moveset. So Sega had to make a decision. Having a detailed looking game that would suffer gameplay wise, or cut back on these details in favour of the gameplay. Now lucky for us gamers, Sega made the right choice. With that hurdle dealt with, developers were now able to finally create a near perfect port of the arcade version of Virtua Fighter 2, even managing to include most of the moves as well as a few extra modes only available for the Sega Saturn. So come late 1995, Virtua Fighter 2 was released in time for the Sega Saturn for gamers to enjoy. And like always, let's go back to the past to see how Virtua Fighter 2 was advertised.
The White Zone, attention, this is the final boarding call for Flight 207.
Only Sega Saturn has three 32-bit processors.
Hey guys, that's our flight. We've got to go.
3 processors mean better gameplay.
Come on, you guys, everyone's on board.
Sony PlayStation only has 1.
If you won't fly the plane, then I'll find someone who will.
Sega Saturn, now only $249 for unlimited action and the coolest games.
Do you hear me?
When you've got Sega Saturn, nothing else matters.
Sega!
The story of Virtua Fighter 2 begins sometime after the events of Virtua Fighter. Akira Yuki is still travelling the world in search of strong fighters to test his martial arts abilities, despite proving this in the recent Ultimate Fighting tournament. The rest of the fighters who participated have all gone back to their lives, but have never forgotten Akira and his mastery of the fist. One fighter in particular, Wolf Hawkfield, still cannot believe someone as powerful as Akira exists and aims to make himself even stronger for the next time that they meet. Each fighter aims to improve themselves, but soon news of a second tournament is announced. However, the second Ultimate Fighting tournament is just a front for the Judgment 6 Syndicate, who have plans of world domination once again. This time, they require all the strongest fighters in the world to attend, so they can collect their fighting data and create an unstoppable army to fight alongside the deadly android Jarrell. Can Akira retain his title as number 1, and what connections does Jarrell have with a ninja cage? Gameplay has gamers controlling a number of fighters in this classic 3D fighting game for the Sega Saturn. Starting out, gamers are blessed with a great intro that shows off some of the stages, as well as the fighters who they'll soon be selecting in this fantastic fighting game. Following the same fighting formula as the original, gamers are tasked with winning fighting rounds either by knockout or throwing the opponent out of the ring. Of course, Virtua Fighter 2 gamers will also use a term known as Axis Strikes, that will allow their characters to move around opponents' attacks and then deal out a barrage of deadly force. A bit like Goku's Ultimate Instinct, followed by Vegeta's Limit Breaker. Each character has their own fighting style, which loosely ties to real-world martial arts, and combining this with fluid controls, gamers certainly won't be disappointed. What's great about Virtua Fighter 2 and the entire series is simple button mashing won't win matches. Instead, forward planning and technique are the key to victory. Now, this is something to take into consideration, especially when playing in the harder difficulty settings. The main boss Jarrell will punish gamers into the ground time and time again, unless of course they become wizards of fighting games.
That was pretty wizard.
When released, Virtua Fighter 2 went down a storm with gamers and critics, almost scoring near perfect scores for the arcade and Sega counterparts. Both versions blew games away with the then revolutionary graphics and superb controls. It certainly felt like Virtua Fighter 2 was everywhere within the world of gaming, even appearing on the Sega Mega Drive, and despite some of its limitations, it's still an enjoyable game to play, even when compared to Street Fighter 2 and Mortal Kombat. With Virtua Fighter 2 gaining even more popularity around the world, there was a comic release called Virtua Fighter 10 Stories. It basically explained some of the events between Virtua Fighter 1 and 2, and like most things, it also became a cartoon. Did somebody say cartoon? Yeah. What about it? Well, I'm Si the Cartoon Guy, and I love cartoons, especially those from the world of gaming. Well, that's good to know, but I've mentioned cartoons before, and this is the first time you've showed up. Yeah, well, I took directions from this strange green alien that flew off into space, and it caused a whole heap of trouble. Okay, but not all cartoons are video game based. Not to worry, as I love all cartoons, so if you need my expertise, give me a call. Okay, have my people call your people and we'll set something up, but for now, I've got a review to finish. That's fantastic, and remember, press play to start. I'll be seeing you. Now, with all the other fighting games available, it does make me wonder which one's the best. Stay tuned for future videos on that subject. Overall, Virtua Fighter 2 is a welcome return to this fantastic fighting series. The introduction of some new characters, detailed stages, and some brilliant gameplay will have gamers coming back for more. Combining all this with great controls, decent music, and a fun factor has stood the test of time certainly provides gamers with a memorable experience while playing. Obviously, the Virtua Fighter series would span multiple sequels, each introducing new characters, as well as perfecting the art of competitive fighting. Hopefully in time, the Virtua Fighter series will make a crossover with Street Fighter, and finally gamers will be able to see who is the best between Akira and Ryu. Out of the two, who will win and face the ultimate challenge in the form of Akuma. Anyway, come back next time where a genetically engineered super soldier is on a mission to save his planet. But can he do this in time and stop the evil Zai Tiger? Thank you so much for watching, and see you next game.
We'll be right back.